Welcome to Reflecting Minds. Today we will be continuing with the Neville Goddard book, Power of Awareness, and today we will be discussing few chapters. Chapter 6, Attention. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. James 1:8. Attention is forceful in proportion to the narrowness of its focus. That is when it is obsessed with a single idea or sensation. It is steadied and powerfully focused only by such an adjustment of the mind as permits you to see one thing only. For you, steady attention is that steady the attention and increases its power by confining it. The desire which realizes itself is always a desire upon which attention is exclusively concentrated. For an idea is endowed with the power only in proportion to degree of attention fixed on it. Concentrated observation is the attentive attitude directed from some specific end. The attentive attitude involves selection, for when you pay attention, it signifies that you have decided to focus your attention on one object or state rather than on another. Therefore, when you know what you want, you must deliberately focus your attention on the feeling of your wish fulfilled until that feeling fills the mind and crowds all other ideas out of the consciousness. The power of attention is the measure of your inner force. Concentrated observation of one thing shuts out other things and causes them to disappear. The great secret of success is to focus the attention on the feelings of the wish fulfilled without permitting any distraction. All progress depends upon an increase of attention. The ideas which impel you to action are those which dominate the consciousness, those which possess the attention. The idea which excludes all others from the field of attention discharges in action. This one thing I do, forgetting those things that are behind, I press towards the mark. This means this one thing you can do, forgetting those things that are behind. You can press towards the mark of filling your mind with the feeling of wish fulfilled. To the unenlightened man, this will seem to be all fantasy, yet all progress comes from those who do not take the accepted view, nor accept the world as it is, as was stated here heretofore. If you can imagine what you please, and if the forms of your thought are as vivid as the forms of your nature, you are by virtue of the power of your imagination master of your fate. Your imagination is you yourself, and the world as your imagination sees it is the real world. When you set out to master the movements of the attention, which must be done if you would successfully alter the course of your observed events, it is then you realize how little control you exercise over your imagination and how much it is dominated by sensory impressions and by drifting on the tides of the idle moods. To aid in mastering the control of your attention, practice this exercise. Night after night, just before you drift off to sleep, strive to hold your attention on the activities of the day in reverse order. Focus your attention on the last thing you did, that is getting into the bed, and then move it backwards in the time over the events until you reach the first event of the day, getting out of the bed. This is no easy exercise, but just as specific exercises greatly help in developing a specific muscles, this will greatly help in developing the muscles of your attention. Your attention must be developed, controlled and concentrated in order to change your concept of yourself successfully and thereby change your future. Imagination is able to do anything but only according to your internal direction of your attention. If you persist night after night, sooner or later you will awaken in yourself a center of power and become conscious of your greater self, the real you. Attention is developed by repeated exercises or habit. Through habit and action became easier, and so in course of time gives rise to the facility of or faculty which can then be put to the higher use. When you attain control of your internal direction, of your attention, you will no longer stand in a shallow water but will launch out into the deep of life. You will walk in the assumption of the wish fulfilled as on the foundation more solid even than earth. Chapter 7, Attitude. I really want to read what he has written about the concept attitude. Neville Goddard, as I'm very impressed by his writing, so I want to know his point of view on attitude. Let's see. Experiments recently conducted by the Merrill Lawrence, Princeton, and the Albert Ames, Dartmouth in the latest psychology laboratory at the Hanover NH proved that what you see when you look at something depends not so much on what is there as on the assumption you make when you look. Since what you believe to be real physical world is actually only an assumptive world, it is not surprising that these experiments prove that what appears to be a solid reality is actually the result of the expectation or assumption. Your assumptions determine not only what you see but also what you do, for they govern all your conscious and subconscious movements towards the fulfillment of themselves. Over a century ago, this truth was stated by Emerson as follows: as the world was plastic and fluid in the hands of God, so it is ever to so much of his attributes as we bring to it. To ignorance and sin, it is flint. They adapt themselves to it as they may, but in proportion as a man has anything in him divine, the firmament flows through before him and takes his signet and form. Your assumption in the hands of God, molding and firmament into the image of that which you assume. The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the high tide which lifts you easily off the bar of the sense where you have so long lain stranded. It lifts the mind into the prophecy in the full right sense of the word. And if you have the controlled imagination and absorbed attention which it is possible to attain, you may be sure that all your assumption implies will come to pass. When William Blake wrote, "What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be," he was only repeating the eternal truth. What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be. Wow. He was only repeating the eternal truth. There's nothing unclean of itself, but to him that esteems anything to be unclean, to him is unclean. Rome 14:14. Because there is nothing unclean of itself or clean of itself, you should assume the best and think only of that which is lovely and of the good report. It is not superior insight but the ignorance of this law of assumption. If you read into the greatness of the man some littleness with which you may be familiar, or into some situation or circumstances an unfavorable conviction, your particular relationship to another influence your assumption with the respect to that other and makes you see in him that which you do see. Basically, he's trying to say here is that if you're seeing some qualities, traits in other person, it is just because you are assuming it to be there. If you just imagine it's not there, if you want to assume something else, maybe this will not be that. I hope I explained it. If you can change your opinion of another person, then what you now believe of him cannot be absolutely true, but is only relatively true. The following is an actual case history illustrating how the law of assumption works. One day, a costume designer described to me her difficulties in working with the prominent theatrical producers. She was convinced that he unjustifiably criticized and rejected her best work and that often he was deliberately rude and unfair to her. Upon hearing her story, I explained that if she found that the other rude and unfair, it was a sure sign that she herself was wanting and that it was not the producer but herself that was in need of a new attitude. I told her that the power of this law of assumption and its practical application could be discovered only through the experience, and that only by the assuming that the situation was already what she wanted it to be could she prove that she could bring about the change desired. Her employer was merely bearing witness, telling her by his behavior what her concept of him was. I suggested that it was quite probable that she was carrying a conversation with him in her mind, which were filled with the criticism and re-criticism. There was no doubt but that she was mentally arguing with the producer, for others only echo that which we whisper to them in secret. I asked her if it was not true that she talked to him mentally, and if so, what those conversations were like. She confessed that every morning on her way to the theatre she told him just what she thought of him in a way she would never have dared address him in person. The intensity and the force of her mental arguments with him automatically established his behavior towards her. She began to realize that all of us carry a mental conversation, but unfortunately on the most occasions these conversations are argumentative, that we have only to observe the passerby on the street to prove this assertion. That so many people are mentally engrossed in conversation and few appear to be happy about it, but the very intensity of their feeling must lead them quickly to the unpleasant incident that themselves have mentally created and therefore must now encounter. When she realized what she had been doing, she agreed to change her attitude and to live this law faithfully by assuming that her job was highly satisfactory and her relationship with the producer was very happy one. To do this, she agreed that before going to sleep at night on her way to work and the other intervals during the day, she would imagine that he had congratulated her on her fine designs and that she in turn had thanked him for his praise and kindness. To her great delight, she soon discovered for herself that her own attitude was cause of all the befall her. The behavior of her employer miraculously reversed itself, his attitude echoing as it had always done. That which he had assumed now reflected her changed concept of him. What she did was by power of her imagination, her persistent assumption influenced the behavior and determined his attitude towards her. With the passport of desire on the wings of a controlled imagination, she traveled into the future of her own predetermined experience. Thus we see it is not facts but that which we create in our imagination which shapes our lives. For most of the conflicts of the day are due to what of a little imagination to cast the beam out of our own eye. It is exact and literal minded who live in the fictitious world. As this designer by her controlled imagination started a subtle change in her employer's mind, so can we by the control of our own imagination and wisely directed feeling solve our problems. By the intensity of her imagination and feeling, the designer cast a kind of enchantment on her producer's mind and caused him to think that his generous praise originated with him. Often our most elaborate and original thoughts are determined by another. We should never be certain that it was not some woman trading in the wine press who began that subtle change in man's mind, or that the passion did not begin in the mind of some shepherd boy, lightening up his eyes for the moment before it rained upon its way. William Butler Yeats. Wow, this was very interesting. I like these 3 chapters. I hope you like them too. Please do leave comments and let me know how did you like them. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.